like Michelle will probably end up doing. But yeah, sure. So we'll go ahead and get started here. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Richard Bandy, and I'm the secretary of the Aero Club of Northern California and a previous Aero Club scholarship recipient, which I say is a shameless plug to help raise money for our current scholarship fund, which is the primary reason why we're having this speaker series, due to the fact that our Crystal Eagle event, where we raise the majority of the funds for our scholarship for local aviation students, has been canceled. So I'll include a link to the GoFundMe page where you can donate to that if you so choose. And so without further ado, I'll introduce tonight's speaker, who will be Ed Daley, who currently serves as the director of the Patriots Jet team. I met Ed along with some of our other members when Ed gave us a fantastic tour of the Patriots Jet facility out at Byron Airport last year. And today Ed's going to give us a virtual tour. So a little bit about Ed, if you didn't get a chance to read his bio. He's had a long journey in aviation that started at the Academy of Aeronautics in New York. And he went on to work for Fairchild, Republic, and United Airlines as an AMP. And later he flew F-105s at Nellis Air Force Base. He returned to United Airlines as a flight engineer and first officer, where he flew DC-7s, DC-6s, 737s, 747s, and he was even part of the space program and trained as an astronaut. So I'm sure there's a whole bunch of stuff that I've left out because he's had such a long career in aviation. So without further delay, I'll turn it over to Ed.
Okay, thanks, Richard. And it's simply because I'm old. You know.
I didn't say that.
You have lots of background stories. You live long enough, you accomplish a lot of things that you can't help it. Okay, so can everybody see that picture of the hangar I've got up there? Okay, so I took a bunch of pictures before I came out here, and I'll throw those in. So Eric, Ray, David, and Michael, you're all muted right now. So if you want to ask a question, just kind of wave at me and I'll probably see it. Or just hit the space bar and go ahead and interrupt me. So this is what you would normally be seeing if you were coming to visit us in person. This is our entrance row right inside the fence. We have one of our L-39s that we stole all the parts off. So it's basically a Hulk out here. We call these gate guards. You know, they stand in front of things like that. And this is our entrance right here. We should really have a big sign over the top of the hangar, but we haven't gotten around to doing that yet. And so that's our facility at the Byron Airport. We have a 36,000 square foot hangar. And this end of it is our workshop. The jet team occupies this whole space, the foundation, this part, and this end down here at the far left, we rent that out. So most of the hangar is ours. So here's an interior view. Here's one of our MiG-17s. This is just as you walk in the door. Here's the center of the hangar right here. All of these back doors open. Everything you see with the yellow tape on it, nylon tape, those are bifold doors. They fold up. And so the entire wall opens up. That's how we get all these airplanes in and out. And it looks like a lot of space here, but this is the foundation side. So we don't have a lot of parking. Over on the other side, they're chock-a-block. They're like 3-4 inches between wingtips and fuselages over there. So it's quite crowded. Here's a view from up in the top of the hangar from one of our drone sites. And you can see only about a third of the airplanes we have. We've got 3 of these Saberliners. We have 8 L-39s. We got 3 MiG-17s. One of them is the blue one in the back there. That's the only thing that doesn't fly. Everything else does. And we got various and sundry other airplanes in here. So, and seated down here at the desk, that's usually where our head guys work. That's Randy and Ginger. They run the show. And here they are. It's Randy Howell. He's the team owner. He's the guy who started all this. We started way back in air racing, in Formula One air racing at Reno. That was our introduction to exhibition flying. And then uh, he decided to get into bigger things. So he bought 4 of these MiG-17s. And it's, I don't know if you guys remember, but the way you did this is the end of the Cold War. And we weren't the bad guys anymore. And they put all of their hardware up for sale. So when the Soviet Union broke up, all of the countries that used to get paid by Moscow now had to have their own gross national product. And so they weren't going to throw a lot of money into the military. So they started cutting back. They were laying off soldiers and sending them home. And they put all of their hardware up for sale. So the Polish Air Force, which was formerly part of the Soviet Union Air Force, they had all of their MiGs up for sale. And so Randy went over there and kicked the tires on a bunch of these and said, okay, I'll take this one, that one, and these 2. And which the way it works is you come back home, you tell them what airplanes you want, and then you wire the entire payment over the internet to an account. There's no receipts, there's no handshake, there's no face-to-face. They give you an account number and you wire the money there. And you sit back and hope that you get an airplane. Now, a lot of people did this thinking, oh boy, I can have my own jet fighter. They sent thousands of dollars over there behind the Iron Curtain and never saw an airplane. We were lucky enough to get a good agent, and so we did get 4 MiG-17s. So that's Randy. This is Ginger. She's kind of our secretary. You can see she's taking a short nap here because she's the hardest working person in the foundation. So I like to give credit where credit is due. And so that's my wife. And I got to give her credit because she allows me to go play with these things. You know, she's the only reason I'm allowed to go outdoors and play like a kid when I'm 82 years old. So this is her in the back seat of our L-39 when we had one. I got her, actually, she doesn't do well flying and she's claustrophobic, but I got her up in here twice in the back seat of this thing and she did okay. So here's our classroom. This is, so the door where we were standing was over here. Can you guys see my pointer? Does that work? Yeah. So here's our classroom. We have 24 consoles here. Each one has a computer, but we really don't use them much. We have a central computer up here and a projector, and I can project lessons onto the screen. And in the background are our simulators. So I'll come back to that in a little bit. There's another shot of it from the back of the room. Everything here was donated. All the furniture, the computers, everything was donated to us. So that's good money for us. And we have, here's one of the jet engines in the back here out of the L-39. And this one is out of the Saberliner. So we can, when we have our engineering classes, we use these a lot to show how air flows through jet engines, teach the kids about jet propulsion, rocket propulsion. Here's a bunch of kids in the classroom. I think we were doing algebra here. So we do STEM subjects, science, technology, engineering, and math. And a very broad variety. We do everything from space flight to plate tectonics to basic aerodynamics to algebra, chemistry, you know, everything that's in those categories. And we're just giving a broad base to these kids so that when they go out in the world, they'll have the tools they need to go down their career path. We also give scholarships. So we have a course called Introduction to Aviation. It runs for 6 evenings, one evening a week for 6 weeks. And they get an hour in the classroom and an hour in the simulator practicing to fly. Okay, we give them very simple things to do. Put them in the air, just make turns, climbs, descents, look at the airspeed, look at the attitude, you know, get used to reading instruments a little bit and looking out the window. And they get, each week they get a little bit more advanced to do. And by the last week, they're actually in the simulator taking off from Byron, flying to Stockton. They do a touch and go over at Stockton, then fly back to Byron, all on their own. And their parents get to come that night and stand over their shoulder and watch them do it. So it's a good way to impress the parents. At that point, they can then apply for one of our scholarships, our flying scholarships. We give up to 9 a year, $2,000 a piece. which is enough to get a student up into solo. We have a special deal for a good rate at Tracy with Skyview Aviation over there to give us a nice cut rate for it. So $2,000 will get them into solo. And by that time, you'll know, do they really want to go forward as a career? And if they do, they can apply for more money. We've had a lot of success stories. We actually had two 17-year-old high school students who had their private license. Both of them got their private license at 17. And they had a quarter share in a Cessna 152 at Byron with two adults. Well, to go fly, one of them had to get one of the dads to drive him to the airport because they were too young to have a driver's license. So they would drive to the airport, then they'd take him flying in the airplane. It was kind of, seemed backwards to me, but it was a lot of fun. So here's our lineup of the performance jets on this side of the hangar. You see the tail of one of the Sabreliners back there too. The far end of the shop is where we do all of our maintenance. Out here where it's parked, we try to keep it nice and clean. But airplanes are very close together, and moving them around is a challenge, especially if I have to get this airplane out without taking these two out. Almost impossible to do, but sometimes it works. So here's our poster board for the MiG-17, in case you guys needed some information on them. Built in the late 1950s. A lot of people get them mixed up with the MiG-15. MiG-15 was in Korea. Okay, the MiG-17 was in Vietnam. These were too late for Korea. And the 17 is a much, much better airplane than the 15. Performance is way up there. So they're close to supersonic. They say 711 miles per hour. I never really saw them go supersonic. The fastest I've ever seen one go was about 680, 685 maybe. And that's with somebody chasing with a cannon blazing. You'd think they'd go as fast as they could. So that may be their limit. They couldn't go supersonic. But they were very, very maneuverable, which made them a tough competitor. They could out-turn and out-climb all of the airplanes that we had in Vietnam. So you didn't get into a turning fight, you didn't get into a climbing fight with them. We could outrun them and outgun them, but that was the problem with them. They were very maneuverable. So this is the first one that we put together. When we buy these things, you know, I said you pay all the money, send it overseas, and one day this truck shows up at the airport, 18-wheeler, and they open up the back of it. It's basically a shipping container, a 40-foot shipping container, and they dump all the parts out on the ramp. So you wind up with, just a whole bunch of stack of parts out here, some big parts, some small parts, lots of really small parts. And there's no instructions, like getting an airplane model in a box and they forgot to put the instructions in. Well, I started life as a mechanic, so I kind of knew how airplanes went together, and most airplanes, regardless of where they're built, are built similar. So, the big parts are easy. We know this wing goes on this side, the other wing goes on the other side. It's when you get down to the small parts inside, hydraulics, fuel, the way that runs, control connections, things like that, then it gets touchy. So it took us about, I think about 18 to 20 months to put the first one together to flying condition. Not too bad. We did real well. And we test flew it right at Byron. We had a guy from United, friend of ours, who's he's rated in the MiG-17, came out from Denver, and he did an afterburner takeoff right off of Byron and did the first test flight on it, and everything worked fine. So really was well built. So we had 3 flying. The 4th one is this one, the blue one in the background here. Now that's just a fuselage with a pair of composite wings. These wings don't come off. They're bolted on there. So it's sitting on a trailer right here, and we take it around to exhibits. But we couldn't do that with the wings on it, so we built a pair of composite wings that fold up on the trailer. And we got a pickup truck out in the front here, you can't see it. But there's no engine in this one, the cockpit's original. But we take it around and unfold the wings, and we take it to shows. We've had everything from football games at the old Candlestick Park and Pac Bell Park downtown to a Microsoft meeting in Atlanta, Georgia. We took it all the way over to Atlanta, Georgia. In fact, it's still in Microsoft blue colors. That's why it's blue. But the reason we never got this one to fly is when we were putting these three together, every time I found a broken part or something inoperative, I would steal it off that airframe. Okay, so that became my parts depot. And I would put a red tag with whatever it was, so hydraulic pump, and hang the tag right where I stole the hydraulic pump. And one day I looked over there and the wind was blowing and it was just this, it looked like a tree with leaves on it. All the red tags were just fluttering in the breeze out there. And we said, that's probably not gonna fly. We're never gonna replace that many parts. So we made it just a static display. So it's the only airframe that doesn't fly. Everything else in the hangar flies. Now we don't fly this too many times because it tends to get expensive. This is old technology. You guys know about jet engines. The original jet engines were centrifugal flow, and it was not a very efficient engine. And so this thing, in and out of afterburner and an air show, will burn close to 1,000 gallons an hour in Jet A. And so when we started flying these, Jet A was about $5.80 a gallon. So $5,800 an hour just to fly this thing, just for fuel. So very expensive. The L-39s, on the other hand, much more advanced technology. They burn about 200 gallons an hour. So we could fly 5 of the L-39s for the same price as one MiG-17. So we don't fly this one a lot. During our fundraiser gala dinner in the fall, Randy takes off with this one right at dusk, and he does an afterburner flyby in front of the crowd out front, and he comes back and lands. And that is it. We put it away for the rest of the year. That's the only time we fly. So just a few details on this engine, on this airplane. We have this one parked over on the foundation side here because we do a lot of engineering studies with the kids on this. And what I'll do is I'll typically say, go walk around the airplane, find something that you are curious about, you don't know what its function is, and come back, point it out, and let's talk about it. So first they think these are bombs. You know, most people start thinking those are bombs. No, they're fuel tanks. They want to know about the wing fences up here, and we can tell. It's just by asking the question, we get into the engineering of the airplane. So one of the questions we got a lot is, why is it split? Any one of you guys want to take a whack at that? Why is the inlet split? No takers. Okay. So where's the engine on this airplane? Let me go back. Where's the engine
So it's split to get the air around the cockpit back to the engine?
Exactly. There you go, Eric. Okay, yeah. Because the engine sits back here. It's behind the cockpit. And when you're sitting in the cockpit, your body's way down here, deep into it. So, yeah, the kids, they struggle with that one. So if you're sitting in the cockpit and you push the throttle up on this thing, you can actually hear the air howling down both sides of the cockpit through the tunnels to get to the engine in the back. This is the end that you really don't want to see in the rearview mirror, this picture right here. Because here's all the armament down here at the bottom. I'll show you that in a second. So side view, we've got little mounts out here. We mount GoPro cameras all over these airplanes when we fly them, and then make publicity films for that. First one we did was we used duct tape, and we put the camera right up here in the vertical stabilizer. So duct tape will go 600 miles an hour. Richard.
I had a question. I was going to say, how many cameras have you lost by sticking them on the wings or duct tape?
Well, we've never lost a camera, but one of our hangar mates who had an L-39 did. He put one on the wing out here, but he just used the sticky stuff on the back of the mount and put it up. Well, it's not going to hang on there. So we actually use, super glue to put ours on or bolt them on. So
okay, You don't use the traditional little 3M sticky thing that comes with the GoPro when you buy it. Okay.
No, that's good for about 150 miles an hour. But, you know, flying around in this thing, you want something a little stickier than that.
Good to know.
So we asked the kids, you know, they want to know, is this a gun out here? You know, but no, that's a pedo tube. And so they'll ask about that. And it's a good way to get them to know something. I say, okay, there's just a rubber tube in here that goes back to the cockpit. It goes to a little instrument up here in the cockpit. And I can, hey, Corey, how you doing? Could see him drop in there. I didn't see him drop in.
Hey, Ed.
How are you?
Good. How you doing?
So we can, the easy way is just to explain, you know, that goes up to a tube up here in the cockpit in an instrument that when it inflates, it pushes the needle up. So if I blow in here with 100-mile-an-hour pressure, it's calibrated so it'll say 100 miles an hour in the cockpit, or knots, or kilometers per hour, whatever we have in it. But that's how we tell our airspeed in the air. So the kids get that connection very quickly. Notice there aren't a lot of panels back here to work on the engine. That's one of the shortcomings of this airplane. I'll get to that a little bit too. So here's the wing. The kids a lot of time will ask about these. Also, this is a good way to differentiate the MiG-17 from the MiG-15. MiG-15 had 2 fences, 17 has 3. So any idea why we have these?
Keep the airflow attached.
Any guesses? Pardon?
Keep the airflow attached.
Say it again.
To keep the airflow streamlined and keep it attached.
Yes. Yeah, we want the air to flow over the wing this way, not span-wise. So with a swept wing, without fences, the air, as it starts over, it hits here first, and it tends to curl back this way and go off the tip. And that you lose lift and control surface. So they put these fences, as a quick fix to put them on that way. This is non-skid paint so that the pilot can climb up here and get in the cockpit. It's a bit of a stretch if you got short legs, but it's possible to do. And I'll explain about a problem that caused for us. The tail is another way to tell the 17 from the 15. The 15 tail actually has more area. It's a bigger one because it's a shorter body. So the coupling is shorter. So they made the vertical stabilizer bigger. The rudder is actually split into 2 pieces, but they are hooked together inside internally. This gadget back here is a speed brake. There's one just like it on the other side, and there's a hydraulic cylinder inside that opens both of those. They just open up like that. It slows the airplane down. Most jets have a speed brake on them. And then the afterburner nozzle is right here. Again, the front end. Any guesses about this gadget here? Looks like a headlight, but it's not.
Storm scope.
No.
Gun camera.
About storms. I'll
Gun
get a
camera?
closer picture here. There it is. What is it? Somebody had it.
Gun camera.
Gun camera. That's it. Yep. So every time you pull the trigger, the film is running in here. And I always ask the kids, why do you think they put a gun camera in there? So I'll ask you guys, why do we have a gun camera? And regardless of where airplanes are manufactured, what the nation is, they all have gun cameras. We have them. The Russians had them. Everybody has them. Why do they do that? They don't have them on bombers.
Isn't that how they keep track of how successful they are?
Yeah. Basically, it's because all fighter pilots are liars. You know, I come back from a mission and say, yeah, I shot down 3 MiGs. Oh, yeah? Well, let's see the gun camera footage, all right? Ooh, not on there. The other thing that they were very careful with on our side, not so much on their side, was if we fired any cannon shells, they looked at every inch of that film to make sure that we were only shooting at a military target. There were a lot of things we weren't allowed to shoot at, especially on the ground. In the air, we could pretty much shoot at anything that was attacking us in the air, but on the ground, they were very particular at what you could shoot at. And if you got caught shooting at something that you weren't supposed to, you're going to spend some time in Leavenworth. It's good for court martial. The rules of engagement during Vietnam were really harsh, and a lot of guys got in trouble just by error, just by hosing off a couple of rounds in the wrong direction. And the guys up north figured that out pretty quick, so they painted red crosses on the top of every one of their important buildings. So if we ever tried to attack one of the buildings, it's going to show up as a red cross on the gun camera. So tricky. Here's their armament. They have one 37 millimeter cannon on this side, and that's a hammer. The 37 millimeter is a big round, and it's kind of a slow firing thing. I think it fires something like 180 rounds a minute, so it's not real fast. Kind of like boom, 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 about like that. But it's a huge round. And on the other side, there are two 23 millimeter cannons, and they put out about 650 rounds a minute. Now the 6-barrel Gatling gun that we had on our airplanes fired 100 rounds a second. 100 a second. That's 6,000 rounds a minute as compared to 650. But we only had about 10 seconds of firing, and then you're out.
Hey, Ed, do all those fire at the same time when you pull the trigger?
Pardon? Say it again?
Do they all fire at the same time when you pull the trigger, or do you have to select?
On these, you can either fire both of these together or the one on the other side individually. So you can select either one side or the other. On ours, it was a single trigger because they have one gun, but it's a Gatling gun. It's got 6 barrels on it, and it rotates around, the spins around, and it fires so fast that the barrel's going around this way. As it fires a bullet down here, by the time the bullet travels the length of the barrel, that barrel is rotated around to the top. So that thing is really howling down there. When you fire those they don't sound like a gun. They kind of go brap. It's a funny sound. It doesn't sound like a gun firing at all. But these guys were pretty dangerous with their weaponry. They could also carry 2 heat-seeking missiles, and their heat-seeking missiles were quite a bit better than ours. I fired 3 AIM-9 heat seekers. One of them fell off the wing, didn't ignite, just went to the ground. The second one did a U-turn and went right over the wing and behind me, and I thought it's going to shoot me down. And the third one just went off into somewhere. I don't know what I was looking at, but it didn't go towards the target. So they weren't very reliable. Theirs were good. Any guesses on what that is on top of the cockpit? It's a rearview mirror. Check 6. Okay. You can see the mirror inside there. So it's sitting in the cockpit. When you look up, you can see straight back across the tail. We had rearview mirrors too. There were 2 of them. We had one over here on this side of the canopy and one on the other side. So you can see back behind you. They also had a very rudimentary electronic net that surrounded their airplanes. It's kind of like radar, but not really. There were these tiny little plastic antennas out on the wingtips and in the tail. And it spread out electronic net around the airplane. And anybody entering that net, it was a light in the cockpit. So they knew when someone was getting close to them. Okay, there's the cockpit with the canopy open. It's really tight, and you sit way down in there. Now, it's got a bucket seat like this because you're usually sitting on the parachute. For the MiG pilots, they had a seat chute, so the chute went in here. And that's your seat pad. No pad, hard as a rock. So if you get into any military jet, don't expect to have a soft, cushy seat. Because with an ejection seat, as soon as that thing fires, you better start moving with the seat. If the seat moves 1 inch under a cushion before it picks you up, it's going to break your back when that rocket fires. So there's no cushions in military seats. So everything we left pretty much intact in here. We only changed one. We took the gun sight out and we changed one instrument, which I'll show you here. We put an American altimeter. That's the only thing we changed. Because when you're flying around the country, ATC doesn't want to know how many meters you are in altitude. They want to know in feet. Okay, but everything else is the same. I'm sorry, we also, on this one, we also changed this to knots, the airspeed indicator. It's normally in kilometers per hour. So the L-39s still have kilometers per hour airspeed. But as long as you know what the numbers are, you can fly, no problem. We put a couple of new radios in down here, transponder on this side, and a couple of radios here, and one up here, I think. Notice the
system
attitude
too.
indicator. It's not upside down. That is right side up. On their airplanes, blue is in the bottom and brown is in the top, which would drive me nuts taking off under instrument conditions. I'd want to keep rolling over on my back. But that's the way they have them. Maybe it's because they flew over water. I don't know. Blue on the bottom. Don't get that. Ours are just the opposite. We always have blue sky on the attitude indicator up here. This is the landing gear handle right here. These red handles, those are as one on each side here and another one right there. Those are for getting the gear down in case the hydraulics fail. You can pull this one and the right gear comes down, nose gear, left gear. Very tight cockpit. Your legs are up in tunnels here. The only thick glass on the airplane is this one right here. This is about 2 inches thick, and I believe it's bulletproof. It's several layers, but it's the one right in front of you, so you don't take a direct shot in the windshield and get killed. You know, I guess you come through here okay, but anything you hit, like a bird or something going at about 700 miles an hour, it would probably bounce off that. It's not going to go through it. Where on ours, on the L-39s, we did have a bird strike, and it went through the canopy and hit the pilot. It was very lucky that he was as skilled as he was, because it hit him right here, right in his face and his throat. It was a 5-pound hawk. In fact, he had a mouse in his mouth, because I found half a mouse body in the cockpit after this, along with the bird. Okay, so what I'm showing you here, see this little rubber boot right along here? Well, when the canopy's closed, there's stored air. We have a tank of stored air up in the nose, and you can throw a lever and inflate this little boot, and it seals the canopy. So now you can pressurize the cockpit, all right? If we didn't do that, it'd leak like a sieve, because metal to metal, you're not gonna get a good seal. So this is a little inflatable rubber boot that will, when we throw the lever, nitrogen goes in there and inflates it and seals everything tight inside, so you can pressurize the cockpit and have air conditioning. We used, on the MiG-17, for whatever reason, they use that same air for the brakes. They're air brakes, not hydraulic brakes. Now, I don't know of any US airplane that has air brakes, or ground on the wheels, wheel brakes. They're all hydraulic. They decided to use the stored air. So you got a limited amount of air. Well, what I've told you about the guys getting in the cockpit, you come up the wing, right, on that skid, and you cannot reach all the way into the seat. So you step up here and then step into the seat, get into the cockpit. So guess what happens? After 20, 30 years of stepping on this rail right here, this gets worn right through. Okay, it gets leaky. So now you take off, you pressurize the canopy, and it's slowly leaking out. Guess when you find out that you lost all your air? when you touch down and squeeze the brake handle and there are no brakes. Bad design. Okay, that's what I would call a really bad design right there. So on the MiG-7, on the later aircraft, including the L-39, they took this rubber boot off the fuselage and they put it on the canopy itself. So you'll see it later around on the canopy. But we put in an extra skid strip here to step on, so nobody steps on this rubber boot. Bad. Okay, drop tanks. I always tell the kids, go over and knock on that thing and tell me what you think it's made of. So they knock on it. It's not metal. Any ideas what they made these out of? They're not aluminum.
I'd guess fiberglass.
Close. No, fiberglass is too advanced for them at the time. And it was too hard to do it. They made them out of wood.
Huh.
This is pressed wood. So it's like a Vantech, you know, like flooring and stuff like the wood chips, and they put it in a glue matrix, you know, around a mold, and then they seal the inside with a special paint used as a fuel tank. So ours were aluminum. Theirs were made out of wood. This one holds 105 gallons. The ones I had on the F-105, I had two of these that were 450 gallons apiece. And we dropped them on almost every mission. These are drop tanks. They only, they're on, see a little hook right here? Pull a trigger in the cockpit, that disconnects and the whole tank comes off. So I always ask the kids, why do you think they do that? Well, it's to increase the roll capability of the airplane. You got a lot of inertia and a lot of drag out here, so you want to get rid of that in air-to-air combat. So you knock these off if they've got fuel in them or not, get rid of them. So you throw them away a lot. Well, we did too, and much bigger tanks. And the reason is economics. The Soviet Union, biggest country in the world, but they have next to no aluminum. We have all the aluminum here in the US. We're very rich in aluminum, okay? And I always say to kids, where do you think they got the aluminum to build their airplanes? They got it from us. As silly as it may sound, they buy it through a third party like Finland or India someplace. We sell it to India, they sell it to the Russians, okay? So, but they were very protective of it. They didn't want to throw these away made out of aluminum all the time because they were short of it. So they got lots of forests out there in Siberia. So they got plenty of wood. They can make a lot of these drop tanks out of wood. On the other hand, we had a lot of aluminum, so we didn't mind throwing it away. So turnabout, years later, we design and build the SR-71 Blackbird. You guys familiar with that? Highest, fastest flying airplane going. You know what it was made out of? It wasn't made out of aluminum. Because it would melt at the heat from the skid friction. Titanium.
Yeah.
It was a titanium composite on the skid. We don't have much titanium in this country. Okay? Guess who has all the titanium? Soviet Union. Guess how we got the titanium to build the SR-7? The same way they got the aluminum from us. We bought it through a third party. So it's like, here we are swapping materials to build each other's fighter aircraft. It's kind of silly. But that's a kind of a cool story based on economics. So Jet A and burns anything. There's the engine. Okay, so this is what's called a centrifugal flow engine. The air goes in through the front of this thing through screens. It's hard to find the inlet. It's just a bunch of screens up front, and it's in there somewhere. And then it goes out, it goes into the intake, and then it goes outward. So it makes a big turn and then goes through these burner cans. So this, it's like a big water pump throwing the air out radially. And it's collected in these ducts here, goes into these cans. We inject fuel into the can and light it. And so each one of these cans has a roaring fire going in it. And the jet blast coming out the back turns this wheel, which in turn turns the compressor up front. So it's keeping itself running that way. You have to have the compressor up front running to compress the air to make it burn. Okay, and so the wheel back here on the shaft goes and turns the one up front. But the air makes two turns, two 90-degree turns, which is very inefficient. So The axial flow engine, which made the air go straight through the engine, was a big advance. And that actually, the Messerschmitt 262 in World War II, the Germans built an axial flow engine. The British built this thing. And at the end of the war, they gave a dozen or so of these engines to the Soviets, who were allies in World War II, and they back engineered it and built these engines. So that's how they come up with this design. Very similar to the old original Whittle engines from Great Britain. So to get it, there's only one panel right here that I can work on the engine, and a very small one on the other side. That's it. To do any serious work in this engine, I have to take the whole back end of the airplane off right here at this seam. So take this fairing off, get underneath and disconnect a whole bunch of control rods, and there's actually a fuel tank back here. I have to disconnect that fuel tank, and all electronics, controls for the elevator and the rudder, and then remove 5 bolts here and take the whole back section of the airplane off just to get at the engine. They didn't make these things for maintenance. I figured they either get shot down or they throw them away after they built tons of them. They built like 12,000 of them. So they were kind of a throwaway airplane. And so it was very hard to work on this. The maintenance on this was a nightmare. The L-39s were much, much better to work on. So here's one of our Sabreliners. We actually have 3 of these. One of them is the old Air Force colors. And we use these now. Usually, we used to use them to take our VIPs to the air shows. They get a nice, comfortable seat back here. You know, this is like first class. It's all leather. They recline. They swivel around. They have their own telephones, TV screens. All this little restroom in the back here. You know, it's pretty nice. But now we use them for upset training. So we train corporate pilots and airline pilots right now how to recover from upsets in the air. It's one of the biggest, if not the biggest, accident cause in current days. But these new electronic controls and everything in the airliners, the pilots don't have the depth of knowledge, and one of the gauges will start lying to them, and they don't know what to do about it because we're told to believe your instruments, don't believe your body. So you have a couple of these instruments go wild, and they lose control of the airplane. I mean, we've had airliners in perfectly normal conditions get upset in the air and go 37,000 feet to the ocean and kill everybody on board when the airplane was perfectly flyable. So and most of it's because they either stall it or get into a maneuver they don't recognize. Now, when you get upside down in an airplane for the first time, it's really disconcerting. You're hanging in a belt, the fluids are all rushing to your head. You feel really peculiar. And if you've never been there, getting out of that situation is very difficult. So what we do is we take airline pilots, put them in our cockpit, which is much like their own, and we turn them upside down. And they get used to feeling it that way. And then we teach them how to recover from that. There's a very specific checklist, three things that you do in a row, regardless of what the situation is. And then we do the shock value on them. So after we train them, we take them up in the L-39 first, teach them in that. And then we put them in this airplane, which is very much like their own cockpit. And this, they're not used to doing aerobatics in this airplane. But we'll say, you know, just be flying along straight and low and say, hey, look over there. What is that, another airplane over? So the guy's sitting over here, he looks out this way, and we turn the airplane upside down. and you got it. And so see if they can recover from it. So it's going to be mandatory for airline pilots starting this year. So we've been doing this for about 3 years. So that Randy got way ahead of the power curve on this one. So that's one of the money-making deals that keeps the Patriot Jet team flying, even though we don't do air shows now. The other one is the movie business. This is our simulator center back here. Here's our 2 engine examples. So we've got a bunch of simulators back here, and this whole complex was donated by these 2 gentlemen from Discovery Bay. they came to one of our fundraiser dinners, and we had a what's called Fund a Need auction to auction up things to kind of raise money to build a simulator center. And they stuck their hand up and says, we'll just give you the money. We'll donate the money for the whole thing. And they did. So we named it after them. And it's, this may be a video. I'm not sure. Oh, yeah, I think it is. A little shaky, but I'll walk through this thing with the video camera. And in each bay, there's a simulator. These are desktop simulators, but we have wraparound screens, 3 screens to give each student a little better realistic view. And in here, we have a big one. That's a beta simulator with huge outside windows. And it really, you can see the whole outside world there. And this one will simulate a number of different airplanes, including multi-engine airplanes. And that's a flight planning room where they can come in here and plan flights. So all the controls, we have throttles and everything for a single engine, pedals, everything works. And we got seats out here, airline seats, so folks can sit there and watch on a big screen, watch their students fly. This one is a virtual 3D virtual simulator, and it's just a lot of fun to fly. It's not a good teacher, but you put a headset on and it's like 3D. I mean, you're in the cockpit of an F-18 flying that thing around. It's really a riot. So this is an airline simulator, a CJ, and we just haven't put it together yet. We have all the computers and everything for it. So all of the controls in here work, and including out the window views. It was donated to us from somebody in Florida. We had to go down, pick it up, and bring it up. So here, this is the composite wing in the MiG over here. Here's a wind tunnel that was student built. This was a Eagle Scout project from a Boy Scout. And we could put airfoil sections in the wind tunnel, and there's a fan in the back and change angle of attack. And the scales here show lift and drag and velocity of the air. So it's a good experimental wind tunnel. And we can teach aerodynamics and stall, approach to stall, things like that. We can actually see the airflow over the unit. We have a little smoke system that blows smoke over the airfoil, so you can see what it looks like. This is a wind tunnel that we built, one of our members built, for paper rockets. So there's a little scale right here, and this lever, the rocket sits on the lever. They build these paper rockets out of a single sheet of paper, and then we put them in the tunnel, weigh it, and then turn the fan on and measure the drag. And that's a good predictor of how these things will fly. Now, the paper rocket project is our most popular. We've done 16,000 students on the paper rocket project. We thought simple, build a little paper rocket out of a single sheet of paper, and we use air pressure with a bicycle pump and some PVC to launch them. A well-built rocket will go about 200 feet up. That's way up there. In fact, it's so successful, Channel 7 came out from San Francisco and did a 15-minute news piece on us doing these rockets. It was really well done. So here's one of our students flying the simulator. We have real world out the world. That's Los Vaqueros Reservoir right there. And he's looking west towards the foothills. But everything, you fly right out of Byron Airport. You can fly to any of the other airports. Pretty good visuals outside. And you get a bit of a wraparound with the 3 screens. All the instruments work, all the radios work. Before you ask, here's what we're using, is X-Plane 10, which is the software. I don't know if anybody has a desktop simulator, but it's a pretty good one. This is the big simulator, and this it's one of a kind. They just produced this thing. It's called Fly This Sim, and I think they gave it to us for testing. It's the beta model. It still has some glitches, but the instrument panel here can produce anywhere, I think it's about 25 different aircraft, single engine, multi-engine, jet. And these wraparound screens are the outside world, and it's high def. It really is quite something. You can actually fly instruments in this one, and train. It's a loggable time. So here's our L-39s. These we got these later, and they're much more modern technology. So the MiGs are 1950s technology. These are all 1970s technology or 80s. So we got some early 80s, late 70s, early 80s ones. 2 seats, which is great for sponsorship, because when we had the MiGs, we had people say, yeah, I'd like to sponsor you, but I want to get a ride in the airplane. Okay, well, you can't, single seat, right? And nobody's going to sit in my lap. So this one, we put the guy in the back seat, take him for a ride. And we did that. And that's how Fry's Electronics got to be our original sponsor. They sponsored us for about 10 years. And we took Randy Fry, who's the owner, in the back seat. And he came back with a big grin, and he started writing checks. And he sponsored the whole team for 10 years. So so Wilbur Wright, he's our #1 pilot, the lead. Huggy, he's a U2 guy. He's Wilbur is an Air Force Academy grad. He flew with the Thunderbirds for a couple of years, and he's one of the few Air Force pilots with Harrier vertical takeoff jets. So he was an exchange to the RAF, the Royal Air Force in England, and they were flying the Harrier, so he got to check out that. And then he flew the F-117 in Iraq. John Huggins, he's the squadron executive for the U-2 squadron up at Marysville, and very experienced U-2 pilot. And I actually gave him his practice interview to get hired at United, and he got hired, so he owes me big time. So he's flying for United now. So when we get these things, this nose bay is full of radar, radio equipment, old military stuff, about 250 pounds of it. So we strip all of that out to make our baggage compartment. So this is the nose wheel well up here. The nose wheel actually comes up forward and sits in that bay. But we have space on this side, up on the deck, and on the other side. And yeah, you can get some golf clubs in here, but no golf bag. So if you the guys want to take the golf clubs with them. But to get the CG back to where it was after I take all this heavy stuff out, I have to put these steel plates in. That's about 180 pounds of steel right there, just bolted down. And we put a big 80-pound battery way up front. So it kind of brings the center of gravity on the airplane back to where it was when all those heavy radios were in here. And we replace all those heavy radios with about 6 pounds of modern solid state radios in the cockpit. Much better. Just behind the gear, everybody notices a little exhaust down here. This is a small jet engine. We use this little jet engine to start the big jet engine. So we start up, it's a very small, the diameter of the engine is only about 8 inches. And it turns 55,000 RPM when you start it up. And then we bleed the air up the compressor section, and it goes to a turbine starter that's geared to the big engine, and that's how you start the big engine. And it's a good way to do it. The MiG, on the other hand, has an electric motor. And you can imagine when you hit the start button on the MiG, you can hear it from the cockpit. Clank, you can hear that relay in the back. It's a relay about this big, and it just goes clank, and it takes 1,200 amps to turn that engine over. So we have 2 of these big batteries like this in parallel, and it just barely gets the MiG engine started. So, but on this one, if this thing fails, there's no other way to start the engine. You're stuck. You got to take that whole unit out and change it, about 25 grand. So electric start is okay. We can always change the battery. It's cheaper, but this is a little bit more efficient. That's looking down the tailpipe. No afterburner on the L39, so they're not very fast. They're limited to about 0.8 Mach, 80% speed of sound. But one thing you do see right here, this bar, and you can see right up here, there are some small holes. And there are holes on the other side too. That's our smoke system. So we have a tank up front here, holds 28 gallons of smoke oil with a pump. And it comes through this tube right here and then up this way and squirts out into the hottest part of the exhaust. And the oil gets vaporized into that smoke that you see. So all smoke oil produces white smoke. All smoke is normally white. We put dye into 2 of our airplanes, put blue dye and red dye in it. So we get red, white, and blue smoke, depending on the airplane. Now, the year we did that, we went to an air show with the Thunderbirds, and the guy said, oh, we were going to do that this year, and now we can't do it because you guys got it. So we beat them to it. Here's the cockpit, a lot roomier than that MiG, and much more comfortable. We actually do have a little pad in this one. It's one of those temper foam pads, so once you sit on it, it goes flat. So it's not going to give you any cushion. But notice, no rubber bladder here to step on. It's out here. You can see it's right here at the edge of the canopy. It actually is mounted on the rim of the canopy, so when the canopy closes, we still get the seal, but we're not tempted to step on it anymore, like the MiGs. The chute is part of the seat. It's attached to the seat in 4 places. When you get in, you put the parachute harness on and you're strapped in. There's no seatbelt shoulder harness. Once you put the parachute harness on, you're attached to the chute. The chute's attached to the seat. So you don't have a separate shoulder harness and lap belt to put on. The plate up here tells us that these pins are safety. So it goes, we have one over here and there's 6 more in the seat that keeps the seat from firing. These are the firing handles right here. You reach down with both hands, you squeeze the top here. So you just squeeze the handles and then pull. And when you pull, the canopy goes, and a half a second later, the seat goes. So there's a charge in the back of the seat that will kick the seat up just out of the cockpit, and then it pulls the trigger on a rocket that's mounted under the seat, and that'll take you about 200 feet in the air. So we can actually bail out on the ground. And if you have 80 knots of forward speed, you'll get the chute to open. I'm not going to try it, but that's what the book says. It's a 80 knot seat. In the old days, you had to have 5,000 feet at least to get out of the airplane. But now, the more modern seats with the rockets on them, they're pretty good on the ground. Again, the only instrument we changed was the altimeter. We put American altimeter in it. The airspeed indicators are still in kilometers per hour. We left them, and all the others are in their original Russian. But number's a number. So as long as you know what it's supposed to be reading, don't care what the number is. The fuel gauge over here, that's in kilograms. So if they pull up the airplane and say, how many gallons do you want? We have to make the conversion. Because we are measuring kilograms. But we put a Garmin GPS map unit up here, 520, I think, what it is. And down here, we put another Garmin and a transponder. That's our radios. So we took 250 pounds of radios and radar out and replaced them with those 3 units right there. Very simple. It's a really nice flying airplane, very easy to fly. I've taken guys up who are private pilots with very low hours and how to make landings in this thing. It's, as long as you keep track of your airspeed, don't let it get slow on you. It's a very forgiving airplane. It's a straight wing, so it doesn't have the bad characteristics that some swept wing airplanes have. We actually do tail slides in this airplane during the show. We take it up vertically, go straight up, run out of airspeed, and it just does like a lawn dart. Turns a 180 in the air, down she comes. You can't do that with another jet. I've never seen another jet do that. Really bad on the engine. There's, when you're sitting in the cockpit, here's the landing gear handle right here. All the starting stuff over here to get the engine started. These are the flap buttons. So flaps up, flaps half, flaps down. Just push the button and the flaps go there. The stick is made to be held in your right hand. The throttle, which is just out of sight over here, is always in your left hand. So all fighters do that. You fly the airplane with your right hand and the throttle with your left hand. Here's that Garmin mapping thing up here. These clocks over here, they go back to the original days of the Russian airplanes. They all had the same clock. They never changed it. So you can look at an old MiG-15. That's the same clock as this one. This is the back seat. I couldn't open the canopy on this one because they're doing maintenance on it, but it's roomier than the front seat. So the instructor always sits in the back seat. Student is always in the front seat. So from day one, the Soviet cadet gets in the front seat of this airplane and learns how to fly. And I did the same thing in the U.S. Air Force. I started in the T-34. They started in a propeller airplane too, and then they go to this one. And then I went to the T-37. And unlike private flying, where you go maybe once a week or once a month, and your learning curve goes up, and then a month later it's down again. You're bouncing. So we flew every day, and if we didn't solo the T-34, which is a complex airplane, it's got retractable gear and flaps, got a constant speed prop, manifold pressure, and all the stuff that goes with it. We had to solo in 8 hours. If you didn't solo in 8 hours, you're eliminated from the program. Okay. So I started on a Tuesday and I soloed the following Monday. I had 6.5 hours when I soloed that one. And it felt like it was too much. I couldn't wait for the guy to get out of the back seat and quit yelling at me. So it just seemed like a long time. And then we went into the T-37 for our first jet, and you had 2 hours to solo that one. After 20 hours in the T-34, they give you 2 hours to solo your first jet or you're out. And we all did. Everybody managed to do it. So it just goes to show you, if you do it all the time, you can learn very quickly.
Did they cut your shirt off after you soloed?
No.
The old time tradition, or cut your parachute off?
They used to cut your tie off, but we weren't wearing any ties. So our the signal we got was we went from our Air Force cap to a baseball cap. We had a red baseball cap with our insignia on it. And so if you soloed, you got to wear your red baseball cap. So this one, if you're working on the engine, they have these huge doors. There's 2 of them on each side, 2 on this side and 2 on the other side. So you can get to everything in the engine. This is a generator right here. This is the tube that goes over to the air starter. That's the little jet engine that starts the big one. The little jet engine's on the other side, and the air comes across here. It goes into an air starter that turns the engine over. So it looks pretty complicated, but fuel controls are. We have a couple of our guys now who have really checked out on this, and they know they can tweak it to get the engine running just the way they want it. They're really good at it. This red tube down here, that's fire extinguisher. So there's a fire bottle up there that we can trigger from the cockpit, and this tube has holes up the top of it. It will flood this bay with CO2. Try to put out a fire. Doesn't say it will, it just says it will try. But much easier to work on these airplanes. Maintenance is a dream. It doesn't take a lot of fixing on the airplanes. We change tires and tweak them a little bit here and there, but they're very dependable. The engine in this thing is actually an airliner engine. It was designed for their tri-motor, like our 727. We just run it at higher power. So we're allowed on our tachometer, when we throttle up, we're supposed to see 106.8%. Well, you know, how can you get more than 100% of anything? It's because the 100% was the civilian max power. But the military version, you can go past that. So we actually go to 106.8% power. I guess it's like, what was that? Spinal Tap, where he had an amp where he could turn it up to 11 instead of 10. Here's one of our ancillary aircraft. This is an old V-tail Bonanza. We generally use this as a taxi. So when we're getting together for an air show, the guys will fly into San Francisco or Oakland typically, and Randy will fly down to Oakland and pick them up and bring them up to, or we take VIPs back and forth to the airports with this too. So it's kind of our taxi cab. Also with the twin, we have a light twin at 340. It's in there for a gear swing right now, but this is another taxi. We can take people to and from the airports that are coming to the air show or to the gala to donate money. And then we got this Kristen Eagle, 2-seat Kristen Eagle. Randy and our crew chief, Mojo, share this one. It's a fun little airplane to get out and just get upside down in and snap your neck. You know, it's a CityJet. So here's another moneymaker. So two of our aircraft, we took the nose cone off. The nose cone out front is just fiberglass. It's an antenna cover. So we took that off and we engineered a mount for a high-tech camera that these guys use. It's a high-definition camera that swivels and pans and tilts and zooms out. It's a really state-of-the-art camera. We mount that on the nose of the airplane, two of our aircraft, and we do all the air-to-air shots for the movies now. They originally did it in a helicopter, so it's called HeliNet that way. And they wanted something for Top Gun to film Top Gun Maverick. They wanted to have something that would go faster and pull more Gs. And so they came to us, so we modified two of our airplanes to do that. So the movie's out now, so I can tell you it's not, unfortunately, there's no theater showing it. But the movie has been released. Top Gun Maverick is out with Tom Cruise, you know, reprising his role as Maverick. Only this time he's a senior craggy guy. But we actually used two of our aircraft and two of our pilots making the movie, in addition to doing the air-to-air filming. A little bit of movie magic. What they do is they paint the entire airplane gray, a flat gray, using movie paint that can be washed off with water. They spray the whole airplane in this flat gray, and they put these little targets on the side of the fuselage and the top and bottom of the wings. And so the gray filter in the camera, you don't see the airplane at all. It's like green screen, you know? So where things disappear, if you wear green and you stand in front with the green screen, it looks like there's something there, but there's nothing there. So the airplane kind of disappears, but the little targets show up. So you can see the attitude of the airplane, but you don't see the airplane. And then they take a 3D image of an F-14 and they paste it over that image, and it becomes an F-14 flying around out there. And so there's one scene in the movie where there's a MiG chasing an F-14 down a canyon in the trees, and they're real close. And that's two of these L-39s, two of our L-39s and two of our pilots simulating that up in the Snake River Canyon up in Northern California. They actually closed the entire canyon up there for 2 weeks while we did the photo shoot up there. So if you go see the movie and you see that tail chase, that's not a MiG chasing an F-14. That's two of our L-39s. So it raised a lot of money to pay for the jet team. That's why we could stay alive without sponsorship and no air shows. Really working well. I'll show you, if you want, I can show you a little film that these guys do, or you can just look it up on the internet, and you can. It's a great shot of all our airplanes flying, the MiG flying, and all that. So, we also have an 18-wheeler that goes to all of our air shows, and we have a briefing room up front for 12 people. That's where the pilots, nice air-conditioned briefing room for them. The back end is where the mechanics hang out. We have all our spare parts. The upper part, it actually has a lift gate in the back. That's the side of it. Right here, there's a lift gate right here. You can see the tracks going up. The gate's up top now, but there's another compartment up top. We put our vehicles up there. So we've got tows and things like that, but all the tools and everything are down here. And we can pretty much overhaul one of our aircraft out of this truck. Goes to every one of our air shows. And here's how we move around the hangar. You know, in that really congested area, this is Towbot. It's a little robot thing, and it's got a radio-controlled box here that hangs around a strap on your neck, and it's got treads on it. It's a heavy thing. Weighs a couple 100 pounds. And you just drive it up to the nose wheel of one of the airplanes. Nose wheel hops up in this little capture, and then you just drive it using a joystick. It's electric. And so this thing can swivel 360 degrees around. So one person can maneuver one of those jet airplanes around and do his own wing walking. You can just walk around the airplane driving it with this little gadget. You don't have to have somebody on a tractor with a tow bar and two guys wing walking. You just have one guy. And in fact, you get really lazy, you can just climb in the cockpit and drive this thing around on the ground, tow yourself around on the ground. So it's a cute gadget. It's pretty expensive. We saw this up at Reno for the first time years ago and said, well, we got to have one of those because it just works very well in a hangar. And when it's off duty, it just plugs into the wall over here and recharges its battery. So it's kind of like your Zumba at home, you know, your little vacuum cleaner that runs around and cleans the rooms, Roomba. Yeah, this is moving airplanes. Cute gadget. This is our dinners, the gala dinner that we have for a fundraiser. This becomes our bar. So that's the horizontal stabilizer off the MiG-17, and this is the wing of the MiG-17 up here, complete with a missile hanging off it. And so the bartender hangs out back here, and this becomes our bar with the seats around it. And this is our Rose Gallery. Every one of these pictures has a story behind it back there. And so we spent a lot of time back there, you know, telling lies and bragging about things. This is the other half of it. This is the briefing room. So the part I just showed you is off to the left here. And this is looking to the right. Lots more pictures, all with part of our history behind it. And this is where we sit around and put those the GoPro videos up after a performance. And everybody gets critiqued. We see the live show up here as it was filmed by belly cams and wing cams on the airplane. And so we do a hard critique after every air show. This is an ejection seat trainer. So everybody always says, hey, can I get a ride? Well, the only people that really we give rides to are the press. So when we go to an air show, typically we show up on a Thursday for a Saturday, Sunday show. Thursday, the guys go out and learn the area, the aerobatic box where the corners are. So they come up with all the landmarks to fly the show within the aerobatic box. Friday, the press comes out, and we usually take the local TV anchor person, whoever that is, and put them in the back seat of the L-39, and we have a camera that looks right at their face, and it's a wide angle, so you can, when we get up and start doing vertical rolls, you can see the earth turning behind them, you know. And we take their picture, and if they smile through the whole thing, they'll show that all night long. If they throw up, they don't. But usually they'll show it as great advertising for the air show, brings people out. But we have to teach them how to strap in and eject out of the airplane because the seats are hot. So we use this trainer right here to show them how to get themselves into the harness, how to eject out of the airplane, and how to make sure the parachute's open. Should open automatically. But if it doesn't, we have a ripcord handle right there. So it's a good little trainer.
Do you give them a
Again?
sick bag just in case they do get sick so they don't get it all over the person in front of them or all over the cockpit? Or has that happened
I
before?
mean, even with projectile vomiting, you're not going to reach me in the front seat. It's too far back there. But yeah, we do give them a sick bag in the flight suit. Now, I do a little bit differently. I don't tell them. I put it in the pocket and I don't tell them it's there. Because I found that if you tell somebody it's there, they almost invariably use it. But if they don't think they have any options, they'll tend to, you know, choke it down and not barf. So I don't know, two schools of thought, but yeah, we do give them the out to do that. In fact, my poor wife, I show you, she doesn't do well that way. And one of our first dates when we first met, I took her for a ride and did a little negative G deal, you know, and she barfed. Made her sick on our first date. Terrible. here's our workshop. So it may look a little bit disorganized, but things are really where they're supposed to be. And we do everything by the numbers because we fly 7 airplanes in a show. We take 6 performers and 1 spare to every show. And you get something left in a cockpit, that can kill somebody. So we're very, very careful. We do a lot of tool control and stuff like that. So these screens up here are live and show us what needs to be done on each one of the airplanes. So each night when the mechanics come in, and we have high school kids that volunteer, we call them the minions. And they can come in and learn about systems on the airplane and actually start doing inspections, tear downs, repairs, things like that. So they're learning the skills that they need to go on to be mechanics or pilots. And they do it for free. We do that. That's part of the foundation's deal. But kids being what they are, we have to be real careful. And so I'll show you in a minute what we do. So every tool has its place. Everything has its place. And the mechanics or guests, these are mechanics that with their names on it, but let's say we have a new kid come in and we give him guest 1. He gets a tag like this. And every time he takes a tool, he takes one of his tags, takes the tool off and hangs his tag right there where the tool was. Now, at the end of the night, one of us can go over here and say, or we go over here and say, hey, there's a couple of tools missing here. And I look up and I see the tag and I know who it is. So go find that guy and where's that tool? You left it in an engine compartment or you left it in a cockpit. That's no good. So it gives us a good accounting for tools. And admittedly, years ago, before we did that, we would lose tools. They'd walk off out of the hangar. But right now, we know who's got them. So every time somebody takes a tool, they take one of their tags and put it where that tool was. And we haven't left the tool in the cockpit since then. So it teaches the kids discipline and responsibility for something that's a liability. This is a little GoPro video taken from inside the lead airplane. This is Wilbur Wright. He's the lead guy, and so it was done by GoPro, and it starts off a little slow, so I'll advance it a bit. Like we come up to okay, about here. So I'll start it here. So I said, okay, wind up the engines. Everybody throttle up. Then he'll touch his head to say, when I nod my head, everybody release the brakes. So he's got an airplane here. He's got another one on the other side over here you can't see. So he's checking engine now. Checking both sides. He'll tap his head, nod, and everybody goes brakes off. And then he'll take off and he'll call gear and everybody will pick the gear up at the same time. So here goes the rotation. And we're in the air. Gear. And you see the gear in the other airplane come up over there. Then he drops back into position on the wing. They're going to go up and do a loop in a 6-ship loop. Now this is a fisheye lens, so it looks like he's pretty far out here, but his wingtip is actually aligned with that tank right there. Now the 2 outer guys pull out and the fourth ship goes into their performance. Upside down. See the smoke up, and that's everybody thinks that air show smoke is for the participant. I mean, for the audience. No, it's so that we can see each other. Now they're going to do a head-on pass here. So we're closed on the other airplane coming the other way at about 1,000 miles an hour crossing here. You'll just see him at the last second. He's going to pass just off here to our right. There he goes. Zoom. Real close in, about 1,000 mile an hour closure. Now all four airplanes will converge at one point. Didn't quite hit it, but they came close. I forgot what year that was, but that's a film that they did for GoPro. See, I should really advance out of somehow. Where's my little?
Try your arrow key. That might work.
Nope. I hate to close this thing. Well, I'll do it this way. Maybe. Whoa, that's not what I wanted. Okay, so a little bit about the foundation. Let me put this up.
Hey, Ed,
Yep.
I had a question about the lines on the canopy. It looked like there was a black line and a red line cross-hatched on the left side of the canopy.
Yeah.
What's that for?
Yeah, they're red line. They're all red, and that's to give the pilot a horizontal, a vertical, and a 45 on the horizon. So instead of looking at the instruments when you're going through a maneuver, if you want to go straight up, you just put that vertical line that's on the side of the canopy, just lay that right on the horizon, and you know you're going straight up. It's just reference lines for the pilot looking out to the horizon, because in unusual attitudes, you can't use the attitude indicator. So what do you guys see this now, the foundation vision? Are you seeing that slide?
No.
No? All right, let me escape out of that. Let me go back to this one. Let's see, let me get this. How's that? You see that?
You see the PowerPoint, yeah.
Okay, let me see if I can do this without taking up the whole screen. Okay, how's that? You see it there? So
There
that's
you go.
our basic statement, what we do for the kids. We have innovative program. We have about 54, 55 different programs. Let's see if I can get it to, yeah. Oop. It went back to, where did it go back to? Oh, okay. Okay. So May of 2013 is when the foundation came into existence. Before that, the JET team was in there, but now we have a 501c3 public foundation for education for the kids. And just some shots in a hangar. There's our classroom full of students. And our goals, encourage students to pursue STEM careers. That's what we're all about. Emphasis is on aerospace because that's where our expertise lies. Make students believe in themselves. It's, you know, that's one of the things we were surprised about is students, they don't seem to have much faith in themselves. We bring them in and say, you know, go in and fly the simulator. Oh, I don't want to do, I can't do that. I'll crash it. You know, they're afraid to try anything like that because they're afraid they're going to fail at it. They just don't believe they can do it. So one of the things we try to do is push them along a little bit, get them to try things, go beyond their boundaries and try something new. And they usually get successful at it. And make learning fun. I mean, if it's all out of a textbook and memorizing numbers and things, that's no fun. So we try to hook them first and make it fun and then teach them. What we say is that they go out and pet the jets, you know, and while they're out there climbing around at the jets, we sneak up on them and teach them something. If they don't know, if you taught something, they learn much better. So our focus is STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. The method, show students what the real world application of the subjects they're learning in school right now. Algebra is not a throwaway thing. You know, you're gonna use that sometime. Believe me, you will. Draw from our library of presentations. We create new presentations as teachers ask for them. That's how we created these. Mostly was on a request from teachers to do this. We use project-based learning to give them some hands-on experience and ask questions. We don't just deliver the information. We go to the classrooms and do presentations there. Just some of the subjects that we've covered. Here's a project. This is the air rocket project. It's the kids build these paper rockets and we take them out in the field and launch them off a launcher like this. And we have a contest to see who can build the best rocket that'll fly the highest. We actually have to measure the altitude using inclinometers, and we give out prizes for the highest flying rockets. This is because we started saying, you know, maybe we'll just go with powder rockets, you know, with these things, because that's the ones that are exciting. But too often than not, you get this and it's a fire danger, and California being the way it is, we decide it's not a good idea. Then they have these stomp rockets with water that you can jump on. They said, no, kids are going to be doing this and pretty soon they're going to get hurt and everybody gets wet doing this one. So there's another water rocket type, didn't like those. So we went to these compressed air rockets, and this is the single sheet of paper, and they roll this piece around a piece of PVC to make the body, put a nose cone on it and some fins, and away she goes. Here's one of our launchers, PVC pipe, put a bicycle pump on it, pump it up. That's a lawn sprinkler head that releases it, and the rocket sits on this tube right here. There's one ready to go. 5-year period. So this is an old presentation because we're way ahead of this now. Over 6,000. Now we're over 16,000 students. And we have teacher workshops so they can do this on their own. Junior Air Force ROTC at Heritage High School. We helped get that into the school. 200 of schools applied for this program, and they gave it to Heritage because we were their partner. They said no other school had a resource like that, so they gave it to them. So we've been supporting them since they got it 5 years ago. STEM academies. We did have a private pilot ground school. Now it's taught by our partner over at Tracy. Young Eagles. We do Young Eagles flights out of our hangar 2 or 3 times a year. Kids get to fly for free. They get a 20-minute flight, and usually the pilots will let them fly the airplane. It's kind of fun. If they had the least amount of interest, you get a free flight in a nice airplane. It's aerospace career fairs we hold twice a year. And this is a brand new AP program that's in existence at Freedom High School. It was a specific program. It's a full year course, search for extraterrestrial life in the solar system. And it covers a lot of different subjects about that. So it's a accredited course now in the high school. That's about volunteers. Don't need that. Okay, so that's about all I can cough up. Should give you a pretty good idea. Close that. There we go. Now I can see you all. So questions, comments, what do you guys got?
Yeah, thank you so much, Ed. Yeah, I guess if you have time and any members have questions, just go ahead and raise your hand or spill it out there.
Yeah, just yell out.
Ed, if you only fly that MiG once a year, how is it that you can keep that thing airworthy? I mean, that's got to be a lot of effort.
Yeah, we do. We actually take it out more than once a year just to run the engine and run fluids through it. Airplanes don't like to sit. They like to have fluids run through them. So we take it out, exercise the brakes and the controls and all, but we try not to burn too much fuel on it. Just a quickie, but yeah, it's pretty dependable airplane. I mean, not much goes wrong with them if we don't fly them too much. They'll develop a leak here and there. We'll have to change some seals. And that's the reason it's good to exercise them once in a while.
Yeah. What's your fuel budget like for a year?
I don't know what the whole budget is, but to take 8 L-39s to an air show, that's an hour away at 200 gallons per airplane per hour each way, plus all of the fuel burn we do at the show, it's pretty large. And the shows don't pay a lot. I mean, they pay us about $25,000, I think, and that's enough to maybe get us there.
Need
Wow.
to get a fuel sponsor.
So we have to make money elsewhere. So we do it in the movie business and teaching upset training. And now there's a new wing. We just opened a new activity. We're not really advertising yet, but we're going to be training military pilots in fighter pilot techniques around the world.
Wow.
In some countries, not everybody can apply, right?
Yeah.
So just allied countries, they'll send us their fighter pilots, their fledgling fighter pilots, and we'll teach them fighter pilot techniques. And this is all done with the blessing of the State Department and the U.S. Air Force.
Wow.
And they'll be flying F-15s and F-16s, things like that.
Yeah.
And we also are starting a test pilot school to train
That's-
test pilots.
That's quite something.
That's a newest endeavor. So.
And how many people are involved in the organization?
On the jet team side, we probably have 30 that are pretty active, and on the foundation side, about 20.
Okay.
Now we've got a lot more on the roster, but I would say on any regular basis, I can usually get one of 20 people to a foundation thing, or one of those 30 people from the jet team side.
Sure.
Will almost always show up,
Wow.
and nobody gets paid. The pilots, the mechanics, anybody, nobody gets paid. I doubled my salary this year. It still has a bunch of, just 2 more zeros, that's all.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I must say.
And how did you get involved with it, Ed?
Well, when I was at United, well, right as I retired from United, I bought an airplane. I got a Long Easy. I bought a kit plane Long Easy. And I based it out of Byron. I ran into Randy Howell, who was a junior co-pilot in my domicile. I was the chief pilot for United at San Francisco. And Randy was a junior guy who flew with me once in a while. In fact, he came in one day and he said, I just looked at my old logbook. He said, the very first flight at United, I was his captain. He flew as a flight engineer and I was the captain. But I knew him as being a junior guy. So we ran into each other, and he was getting into air racing then, and he was building a one-off Formula One racer. And I said, well, yeah, I could help you out. I've got a mechanics license. And boy, that was all I needed to say. He just took me to the hangar for the rest of the time because I could sign everything off legally. So we've been together for 22, 23 years now, from air racing up through the formation of the jet team and then the foundation.
Wow.
So other than his wife, I think I'm the longest lived member, charter member. Everybody else has kind of gone their way, but I've stuck around.
Wow. So you talked about having to wire a pile of money over to buy one of those planes.
Yep.
How much money did it take to buy one of those?
Well, for the MiG-17s, amazingly little. They're listed a used car. I think we paid $7,500 a piece for them.
Wow.
Now the L-39s, which are a lot later, depending on the age and how many hours it had on them, they were going anywhere from 65,000 to about 140,000.
Now, did you buy those the same way?
Pardon?
Did you use the same process for buying those?
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
I paid 75,000 for the one I had. Since I was building Randy's, I'm going to build one for myself too. So during one of the orders, I just put in for an extra one. It looked like I had a pretty good number. So I paid 75 for that. I built that one solo, no help. In fact, I built 3 L-39s without any help.
Wow.
Stockton for a guy over there. He contracted me to build them, and then my own. And I flew it for about 2 to 3 years, and then I sold it for what I sold for 240,000. So that's how I got where I'm living right here. This house paid for by that airplane. It's one of the few financial things I did right.
And that's hard to do.
But not a lot of money.
There's very few people that make money in aviation, so that's really impressive, Ed.
Yeah, it was what was the thing? How do you make a small fortune in aviation? You start with a big fortune.
And know when to quit.
172 costs more. New.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, brand new 172 costs more than that. That I sold at you could buy. There's a MiG-21, which is a supersonic airplane, for sale. A couple of them. There's one down in Texas. I saw it for 55 grand, certified, flying condition, everything.
Wow.
You can't afford to fly it. You get it started, and you taxi it to the end of the runway, and you've maxed out your credit card.
That's pretty crazy.
The one thing I remember about the MiG-21 is when they go into afterburner, it adds 63 gallons a minute to the burn. Oh, you just watch the fuel gauge go down.
Wow.
Jet
Well,
airplanes are fun, but they're expensive.
yeah. Well, Ed, we sure do appreciate you taking the time to put that presentation together and share it with us. I, for one, greatly enjoyed that. I really enjoyed the pictures. I enjoyed the explanation, your stories that went along with that. Sincerely. And we did record this, so it will end up on our website one of these days so that other people can enjoy the same presentation. Thank you.
Well, my pleasure. Happy to do it.
Yes,
Richard,
that was terrific. Thank you.
Okay, enjoy. After this is all over, we'll do it in person.
Look forward to that.
I'd like that. Thank you so much. And it was a pleasure having you virtually. And thank you again for giving us the tour in person last year. We'll have to schedule that again with members in the future.
Yeah.
Things
Thanks,
settle
Richard.
down.
Appreciate that.
We had a
Hey,
fly-in
guys. You
to-
guys stay safe out there and stay out of the smoke.
David, were you trying to say something?
Oh, I just said I was with the Santa Clara County Airmen. We had a fly-in there to Byron for a tour and enjoyed that very much. But this showed even more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, it was very nice. How do you get the kids coming there? I mean, Byron isn't exactly a very big place.
Yeah, I know we're kind of geographically desirable out there, but they actually come by bus. Some of the schools have enough money that they hire a bus and bring them out. We get them from Stockton, from Tracy, from Brentwood, Dublin. Some of these schools have some money behind them, and they just hire a bus and bring them out to the hangar.
How about on the west side?
We'll
of the
go there.
bay?
We go to the schools.
How about on the west side of the bay? Palo Alto, Redwood City, Mountain View, San Jose?
Haven't gotten down there yet. We haven't had much interest down there. They have a lot of other companies down there, but
Yeah, but you're different. You're special. I would
Yeah.
think there would be interest.
I would think so. But we're trying not to overpromise. You know, we have to have volunteers to be able to do this, and most of the guys have regular jobs, so it's hard to do. One of the things we just participated in a week ago was the 100th anniversary of the first transcontinental airmail. I don't know if any of you guys knew about this, but September 8th in 1920, a brave pilot in a biplane took off from Roosevelt Field, Long Island, and 13 legs later, they landed at Marina Green in San Francisco with the mail. And it was a bunch of 13 different pilots across the country. And we recreated the entire route, and volunteer pilots flew it. So I was the MC at Republic Airport on Long Island that day, representing the organizer, because Roosevelt Field's been closed for a long time. It's a shopping center, but Republic Airport is pretty close by. And we launched the first flight out of there in a Cessna 172. And then John Sawatsky, one of our instructors at the foundation, flew the last leg from Reno to Concord, to Buchanan Field.
Cool.
So we were at each end of that historic event. So they sent a bunch of postcards and got them stamped at Republic Field, and it got them stamped at Buchanan Field at the end. So 13 stops across the country, the original route laid out by Eddie Rickenbacker.
Wow.
Very historic event. So it kind of went by without a lot of knowledge, but there were a few articles across the country as people found out about it.
Well, once again, thank you very much.
Okay, Eric. Pleasure.
We will have another speaker here. Have we got a date for it yet, Richard?
I'm not 100% sure. Let me ask Michelle. Do we got the ninth speaker set up? Do you know?
I haven't heard anything.
Yeah, I don't think the next one has gotten back to us yet, so we'll have to send out the newsletter once we get confirmation.
All right.
They're going to speak for us.
Well, there you have it. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
All right. Good night. Thank you so
Okay,
much.
Good night.
Take care.
Michelle says bye.